How you doing, folks? This is going to be a short video. Those of you who were watching my last video may have noticed that this van wasn't starting when it came to actually moving it back into the shed after I was finished working on the MG. Bollocks! Now, that is an unacceptable situation, but what's causing it is basically the fact that the engine requires a hell of a lot of cranking in order to actually get it going. And being that this is a TDI engine, that shouldn't be the case. So a quick bit of investigation reveals this: wetness around the fuel filter element. Now I can assure you this is definitely not a JCB engine in this. Probably be a hell of a lot more powerful and reliable if it was. Actually, not that much more powerful in fairness. But anyway, yeah, it's leaking around the O-ring. Now the motor factors had told me that this fuel filter would fit, but obviously the O-ring isn't making a good seal, so we need to change that. So I have another fuel filter to go into it. So let's pop that one off and put a new fuel filter on it and see if that sorts out our problem. I had spotted this issue before, so what I did at the time before I had a new fuel filter was I stitched it on. So it required getting the old channel locks out to remove it, but it's hand tight now. Not for the want of force anyway. So it's just a spin-on filter. So spin the old one off. I'll smear a bit of diesel on the O-ring and put the new one on, and we will start the engine, see how we get on. It's very hard to show the difference here, but if you look, the middle O-ring is actually a lot higher on the JCB filter than it is on the Wix filter I have here to go on. So it must be that's causing the problem. So we will hopefully not see a leak now when we put that back on. If we do, then we have another problem. It makes good sense to fill the fuel filter a little bit before putting it on. I did not fill it off the old filter, by the way. That's a stupid idea, in case you're wondering, because you're going to be pouring all the croutons that the filter has caught over the last while into the new filter, and possibly on the wrong side of the element, which will be ready to get sucked into the fuel pump, and the fuel pump won't thank you for that. But the other thing as well is you need to just smear the O-ring with a bit of diesel there, just to make an effective seal. So let's spin that on. Okay, hand tight is enough. You don't need to stitch it. Not normally anyway. Obviously the reason I stitched the other one was because it was leaking. So, but as I said, it shouldn't be leaking. Now, while we're at it, the other thing we can actually mention is this little lad on the bottom of the fuel filter. That is a water drain, okay? And you should, it says here, if you drain the water every 50 hours of use, but to be honest with you, in the likes of you could do it every time you change your oil, for example, or maybe a little bit sooner than that, unless you're getting particularly low quality fuel. Just let a little bit of it, maybe a cupful of fuel out of the bottom, and you'll see if there's any water in it, because the water will sit at the bottom and the fuel will be floating to the top. You'll kind of see it in there. Modern cars have a kind of an icon that shows when the fuel filter has water in it, and there's obviously a sensor to detect that. So if you see an icon like this coming up, you will know that is time to drain the water out of your fuel filter, because obviously if you don't do that and too much water builds up, you're going to have a problem. Anyway, the battery is still charging away, but it's actually charging all three batteries in the camper van concurrently, so I think there should be enough current in this to do the business now. So let's try and start it and see how we get on. Hopefully there isn't too much air in the system. So take our charger out of the way, and we'll get all cables out of the way, so we don't cables wrapped up around belts and all this kind of stuff, because if you do that, you're going to have a bad time. Okay, so let's see how we get on now. Leave the glow plugs to cycle for a few seconds. Realistically, they shouldn't need to cycle for that long. It's just because it's using the old indirect injection system. Job's a good one. It certainly hasn't started that easily in a while. Anyway, let's just go and have a look and see if there's any air bubbles coming through. Sometimes you'll get a stumble in the engine when you do it, and sometimes it'll cut out. It's just a case of restarting it then, and hopefully it'll pull the fuel through. But you do need to make sure that you fill the fuel filter, because if you don't fill it, you're going to have a hard time getting the fuel back through to the pump, and you can end up having to crack injector lines and all that. It's an awful faff. You know, try and get as much diesel into that fuel filter as you can, and this is the end result. So it's ticking over all right there now. So I'm just looking, I don't even see any bubbles coming through the fuel line or anything like that. To be honest with you, the last while there was a steady stream of bubbles coming through that fuel line, so that would suggest to me that, you know, obviously if it's leaking diesel, it's going to be sucking in air. Maybe that was one of the big causes of my running issues on this engine. Kind of half tempted to take it for a spin, although I can't really. It's been used as a bit of a storage shed at the moment. Let's get it back indoors and leave it be for the moment. I'm certainly not going camping now because of bloody COVID. Is it ever going to go away? I want to go off camping in this, and I want to be able to actually live my life. Well, anyway, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but anyway, look, there you go. Right, so anyway, look, folks, we'll leave it there for the moment. If that fuel filter hasn't sorted out my starting issue when the engine's been sitting up for a while, then we need to investigate further, and that will necessitate a longer video with more detail in it. So, but for the moment, let's just assume it's right, and yeah, we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in a future video. Talk to you soon.